Have you seen any good films recently? Well, we have. Trust us to introduce you to two great films. Tonight on Film Swap.
Here is a motion picture film. Let's tidy up this tangle of film by putting it on a reel.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to Film Swap. My name is David Seeley, and I'd like to introduce you to my esteemed co-host, a man who I trust completely, and he is the ecstatic gaucho himself, Mr. Jonathan Pritchard Barrett. Jonathan, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Well, I'm all right. Just before we came on, we were talking about hay fever. We're both suffering a little bit. There's a high pollen count in the air recently, so we're all sort of sniffling and got watery eyes and all that kind of business.
Yeah.
But we're going to soldier on through tonight because we don't want to deceive anyone. We got a couple of really great films to talk about tonight, and our theme is trust and treachery, because we're talking today about two films where not everything is as it seems, is it, Jonathan?
Definitely not. No. Appearances can be deceptive in both these films.
Absolutely. And we have characters that are not all they seem. People don't know who to trust and where to turn. And people are trying to figure out what's going on. And that's kind of why we called the show Trust and Treachery. Yeah. And we've got two really, really great films tonight. I think, Jonathan, originally we came upon these two films because we were doing a little bit of a sort of a watch list episode. Jonathan said to me, let's pick a couple of films that we've always wanted to see and we've never got around to seeing them. So Jonathan picked something that he'd been wanting to see for a really long time. And so did I. It was a film that I've been meaning to watch for ages and ages, got the Blu-ray, ended up on the old stack waiting to get watched, and I just never got around to it. So this was my chance to take off the shrink wrap, get it spinning in the player, and get it watched. And then, as always seems to happen when we pick films like this, a theme emerges, because even though the films on the surface are very, very different films, in terms of their genre and their sort of, there's a lot of differences between them, but actually I think they do tie together quite nicely in their examination of human nature.
Yeah.
So tonight we're going to talk about the films chronologically, so I'm going to hand over to Jonathan first to introduce his pick, because he picked a really, really, really good film that I wasn't at all familiar with before he mentioned it. So it was a first time watch for me as well. Yep. And I really enjoyed it a lot. So let's talk about it. Jonathan, over to you to introduce Nine Queens.
Nine Queens, or Nueve Reinas, I think, or Reinas. And it's basically an Argentinian film from the year 2000. And I remember reading reviews about it back, 25 years ago, madly, saying this is a really good film. And I thought, I'd really like to go and see this. And somehow I didn't get round to it. And then, it wasn't in cinemas anymore. And I sort of forgot about it, but it was in the back of my head. And then one of my colleagues at work, Ken, who has been on the show a while back, and he came into work and said, I saw this really good film last night, Nine Queens. I thought, Nine Queens? God! I've been meaning to see that for how long? 25 years!
Can you do that again, that Nine Queens? God!
Nine Queens! God! And so anyway, that inspired me to come up with this theme, because we're always sort of fishing around for themes. I thought that's a good one. These films that we all have them, films we've heard about, seen the trailer for, read a review of, a friend told us about, that seemed just right up our street, but somehow we just never got to see it. And so I thought that's a great theme. That's where the idea came from. So this one, I think one of the things that interested me is the fact maybe because it's Argentinian. I have an interest in Argentina. I've never been there. But of course, the Ecstatic Gaucho takes its name from a Jorge Luis Borges story, not the title of it, but from it. And my granddad lived there, helping. He was a railway engineer in the sort of early part of this century, building railways. So I've always had an interest in the place. I thought, and also the other thing is the film is a heist sort of film. I really like heist films, intricacy of them, how everything sort of comes together like this. So I thought this sounds right up my street. And so, yeah, I'm really glad I watched it because it is a terrific movie. Absolutely terrific. I'm really glad. And the interesting thing was, it says on Wikipedia, or I think they remade it in America. Actually, Steven Soderbergh remade it, Criminal, but it's basically one of his least successful films, or less successful films. But in India, it was a big hit, and it's been the basis of 3 films in India.
Wow.
Bollywood film, a Malayalam film, and a Telugu film. Can you believe it? Wow. Anyway, so yeah, there you go. As recently as 2022, it was selected as the 10th greatest film of Argentine cinema in a poll by an Argentinian magazine. So, yeah.
Wow, it was really brilliant. You're right. It would have fit in quite nicely when we did our heist highlights. A few, a little while back, we did an episode called Heist Highlights about heist films, and this film would have fit in quite nicely.
Definitely.
But it's kind of a heist film with a difference, isn't it? Because what I really like about it is that right from the very beginning, it establishes very well that the 2 main characters, you really don't know who's true, what's basically, you just never really know what's going on, because they establish quite upfront that both of these guys are proper con men and grifters, and they meet each other in a I guess it is like just a corner convenience store, like a gas station with a little shop in it. And they go in, and one of the guys tries a little con on with the checkout girl at the counter, and so the other guy approaches him, and then they both sort of introduce themselves as basically little small time criminals and con men. And the other tries to enlist the younger one on a sort of a job that he wants to do, or he offers, I guess, to spend a day sort of teaching him how to be better at being a con artist. So then what transpires is that the 2 of them go on this little adventure that involves one of their sisters, and some very priceless antique stamps.
Yes, that's of the title. The 9 queens are 3 stamps with a queen's head on them.
Yes. So then the idea is that they want to basically shake down a stamp collector. So that's the basic premise, the plot of the film.
Yeah.
But what's fascinating is, like I said, is that literally every single character, every single scene, you always are kind of looking and saying something fishy's going on here.
Yeah.
And who's conning who's trying to trick who.
Yeah.
Everyone is sort of a bit suspect and a bit like you're not quite sure, is this person genuine, or is this some sort of part of the con, and who is trying to trick who. And the whole film is absolutely riveting in that sense, because you spend the entire time literally trying to figure out what are they up to? Is he tricking him or is he tricking him? And it's literally like that all the way through.
Yeah,
And and just when you kind of think you've got it figured out, another curveball gets thrown in.
yeah, yeah.
So it's really, really clever and really, really quite make some quite profound observations about just sort of human,
Human nature.
because these guys kind of become friends, don't they, in a
Yeah,
strange sort of way.
yeah,
But their relationship is kind of um, all built on deceptions and lies and half truths and
yeah,
manipulation, and every story and any time when you think that they're having like a little bit of moment of connection,
yeah,
then it turns out that somebody's fibbing or somebody's stretching the truth, or somebody else shows up and you're not quite clear about who knows who and what their relationship is. So it's just absolutely fascinating stuff.
it's terrific. I mean, up there in the sort of the heist or con crime movie sort of genre.
Mm.
It's up there in the top 10, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
It's
I was so impressed by it, so impressed. And I
yeah,
thought, what did you make of the? So this was a first time watch for both of us.
yeah.
Would you say that, because we're not going to spoil the ending, obviously, and we don't want to go into too much, precise detail about what goes on, because I think this is a kind of film that when you first go in and see it for the first time, you definitely don't want to know anything about it, really, do you? Because you
I
want
would
to sit down
I would actually,
and
if you want to see this film, I would stop listening to this podcast now, go watch it, and then resume once you've seen the film because you will.
yeah, that I mean that is best practice anyway. I would have thought with
Yeah,
film discussion podcasts, is that really the idea is that you watch the film first and then you come and you
yeah,
join in the virtually in the discussion
yeah.
about the film. So
Some
yeah,
more
we
than
would
others,
always
I would say, and this one definitely very, very much.
yeah, you don't want you want to go into this thing just like I did, with absolutely no idea
Yeah,
what was going to happen. No, I had no idea about the story. Literally, Jonathan, you just told me this is a film I want to talk about. You
yeah,
sent me a link to the I don't know, whatever, the Wikipedia page or the Amazon link or whatever it was, and you
yeah.
just said this is a film I want to talk about, and I was like, oh, okay, never heard of it. Let's go and check this out. What is it? And yeah, just so it's absolutely, yeah. You want to go into this thing with a complete blank slate and not know what's going on, because
Yeah,
then I think you get the kind of the most out of it, really.
definitely. And that's one of the things quality I like in a film is that quality of not knowing what's happening, not knowing
Mm.
where you are, and the sort of sort of what's going on, and being um, utterly befuddled by it in some ways, and waiting for the sort of penny to drop. And this really does that in spades. It's terrific.
Do you think it's quite a kind of a cynical film in some ways?
It is. It is. Yes, that's true. Because I mean, because they're all, I guess, ultimately sort of everybody's out for them at their own sort of benefit, aren't they?
Mm.
Um, and you can't trust anybody, as we know. And I mean, the whole. But you sort of know. I guess you know where you are from the very beginning. These are con men.
Yeah.
They're grifters, and the nice thing is that it starts off with this little con in the shop, and and they're sort of, it's not very savoury because the person who's being ripped off is just a young woman who works in the shop. You think,
Mm.
what? How did she deserve this then?
Mm.
And so you could see, you get a measure of them from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And
And then that goes on because he then, the older man sort of goes and he cons old ladies in their
yeah,
apartment buildings.
yeah,
And then there's a scene in a coffee shop where he's really, really unkind to a waiter. And
Yeah.
so you're
Yes.
right. There is always this real sort of sense of um, they literally will do anything for money,
Yeah. Basically. Yeah.
and so that completely kind of colors the perception that you have as the story evolves,
Yeah.
because you always are always trying to, you're kind of second guessing what's going on and
Yeah.
sort of saying, what's there, this is this what is somebody up to something there? Is he trying to trick him?
Yeah.
Or, and there's a bit where, he goes off and he makes a phone call, doesn't he? And he kind of says, oh, just a minute, can I just have some privacy for a minute? And then that kind of colors your complete perception of the next sort of 45 minutes of the film.
Yeah.
You kind of think, oh, well, what was that phone call about? Who was he
Yeah.
talking to?
Yeah.
you know so but then it goes off in a direction that you don't expect.
No. No. Exactly. And yeah, whenever they're on their own, you're sort of you don't trust them. What have they got off to do then? Like there's another bit where he goes off to um, towards the end to go and see somebody who he's just left. What's going on? So when they're together, you know neither of them can trust each other entirely. It seems, and
Mm.
then when they're separate, you wonder what's going on as well, and it's very very slippery indeed.
Mm.
And one of the things I really like is that they keep on saying, "I'm not a crook." That's a line that appears sort of 2 or 3 times, I think, in the film. A number of characters say, "Well, I'm not a crook. I'm not a crook."
But
they're sort of honest con men or something like that.
yeah, yeah, they are. Yeah, that's true. At least they're completely honest and upfront about it.
Yeah, but you couldn't get any more sort of deceitful people in the world. Really, they're just utterly crooked. It's
Well, what do you think about the older man? He At
Marcos.
one point he makes a speech about he almost asserts his morality over other types of criminals. And there's that wonderful scene, very perceptive scene, where he kind of says, oh, you're calling me a crook and you're saying all these things about me, but at least I'm upfront about it, and I don't, I don't hurt anyone, I don't
Mm.
use any gun, I don't do anything like that. And
Yeah,
then they kind of have this wonderful scene where he says, just stop and look. It kind of reminded me of that scene from that Jack Reacher film, the
right.
first one, the Tom Cruise one, which is quite good actually.
Yeah,
And they,
I've seen that one.
and he says, just stop and look around. And then he starts, I mean, maybe that's where they got it from actually, because this film kind of predates,
Yeah,
predates the Jack Reacher thing. But he says, stop and just take a closer look around you at what's going on. And then they show all these little bits of people doing all these underhanded things, whether they're sort of stealing something or,
okay.
being, and I thought that little scene was quite perceptive and quite powerful, but quite cynical in the sense that it's sort of, and the whole film has that feeling of just like, making this, putting forth this idea that relationships are kind of transactional,
Yeah,
aren't they? And
everyone's
sort
already.
of that everybody's has some sort of agenda with one another,
Yeah,
and can you really trust what anyone says to you or
mm,
does in any kind of situation?
yeah,
Because that's how the world works. People on some level are always operating on some there's some aspect of self-interest in everything,
yes, yes,
isn't it, that we do, everyone.
that's true.
So, and that film kind of makes that observation and uses this story really well to point that out, to
Yes,
sort of show that the way that people, the way they relate to each other.
yes. Well, I guess this maybe also slightly comes back to it does maybe relate to Borges, who I'm always banging on about, because it's like it's the film is like the sort of height of artifice, and it's sort of saying that really. in a sense that everything is a sort of game, essentially,
Mm.
and nothing is really real, which is a sort of theme in Borges's writing as well. I don't know if it's
Yeah,
a special Argentinian vibe, but yeah, and you can't really trust anything in a sense. Um,
yeah,
it's sort of almost metaphysical as well as sort of
yeah.
as much as anything else. Yeah, amazing.
You know what? It seems weird, but like for me, like it's something that it really kind of made me think of, and because I absolutely detest LinkedIn.
Oh yeah,
The website, which is kind of like this Facebook for sort of,
business.
commerce.
Yeah,
And I detest it because it is literally just all artifice. It's all
yeah,
people just selling themselves or selling their business or selling
yeah,
them, and it feels like such a dehumanizing sort of venue
yeah,
where it's literally, if people will excuse my use of language, it is literally just the Facebook of bullshit, because it is literally just everybody's just talking shit and
yeah,
talking crap, and you know and so I just detest it. And for some reason this film kind of made me think of that in a sort of way, because it was
right.
almost like that was what all the relationships in the film are built on, that because they're built on this idea of somebody's, even in moments when there's kind of empathy towards each
Yeah,
other, there's an artifice to it because it's a sort of a type of manipulation,
yeah,
like the relationship with the sister, and the young lad, the younger brother,
yeah,
because there's a bit of a subplot about an inheritance,
yeah,
and sort of the relationship between the siblings there is absolutely fascinating.
yeah,
Where along the way some bubbles get burst, and and you find out that everything isn't as it seems, but and all that to do with that the dynamic between the brother and the sister and the younger brother is all to do with money as well. It's
yeah,
all about, basically fighting over money and who's going to take what and who took what
yeah,
and all that. So the film just has that sense of absolutely, literally every moment isn't really what it seems.
yeah,
So I just thought it was absolutely fascinating, and I was just totally riveted the entire time.
yeah. It is an extraordinary extraordinary film, really, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
And I think it's one that I guess it, obviously it has quite a lot of influence in the sense that it was remade by Hollywood, and it was, well, and even in as far as field as India, it's been remade, but it's still a little bit niche if you don't know about these sort of things. And I think it's a film that more people should know about, really.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, when you brought it to my attention, I didn't. I guess either I'd never heard of it or just didn't remember it, because
Yeah.
it's weird, because I still have in my head, for whatever reason, because of my age, I think of any film that was made in the 2000s
Hmm.
as being a relatively new film. Like that's kind of how I think in my head.
Right.
Like I kind of think, oh, that's a
Yeah.
fairly recent film.
Yeah.
But actually, you're absolutely right. It's 25 years old, this film.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it is entirely possible when it came out at the time, I might have heard about it, but I just kind of just forgot about it, I guess, because I never saw it. Didn't really, over the years, people haven't really continued talking about it. There hasn't been a lot of kind of noise about it over those last 25 years.
No.
So I literally just was not familiar with it at all. And I thought, oh, this looks really cool.
Yeah.
And, and it is.
Oh, it is a great film. Yeah, there's one sad story about it. Basically, the director made a second film, and
Okay.
he died aged, I think, 49,
Oh, blimey.
47, 47 of a heart attack. Can you believe it?
Oh, well, that's a shame.
Yeah, just 6 years after this. This was meant to be a trilogy. Each one was meant to focus on a different aspect of filmmaking, apparently. This one is focused on mise en scène, The Aura, which is his second film, focused on point of view, which apparently is also meant to be very good, according to one of my movie buff colleagues. Um,
Okay.
and then the third film would have focused on editing, but by that stage he was no longer alive, so the third film was never made.
Oh, well,
Um,
that's a shame.
yeah,
Well, I'd definitely like to check the other one out because I
exactly.
enjoyed this one immensely. So I would be keen to see. And yeah, when you hear things like that, it's you kind of think what a shame because
Hmm.
what else might have we got if he'd survived and
Well,
was
exactly.
still making films.
You really think with this guy, he would be up there with the sort of the greats, I'm sure. But he never really got that chance, unfortunately.
Vaguely, the cast too is just absolutely terrific, like across the board. The young guy, for some reason, I sort of vaguely thought I recognized him, but I couldn't place him. So I don't know if he's been in other films that I've seen.
Young one, Gaston Pauls is the guy's name. I don't know if I don't think he's been in. I think it's mostly in sort of Argentinian films, as far as I can see, or South American. Well, he
Hmm.
was in Antibody, which is a American sci-fi film, but it looks like. Oh no, maybe he was in Che. You know not trilogy, that those two films, Che about
Yeah.
Che Guevara. I think he was in those, but it sounds like he's mostly been in South American movies. So I
Oh, well, I
guess.
guess maybe just I've seen some other
Oh, have you?
Argentinian film or something that he was in at some point. I don't know, but he did look like I vaguely sort of thought
Okay.
I recognized him. Um, but I thought they were all really good. I mean, his character is quite fascinating because he did come across as a bit kind of naive in a sort of way, like he's just the
Yes.
young guy, the up and comer. He's just starting out. He
Yeah.
has a bit of a backstory about why he's doing what he's doing.
Yeah.
Uh, but you always again get that sense of he's not quite all he seems.
Well.
Just like everybody else, every single other character. Even there's that bit when they go to the old lady. There's
Yeah.
an old lady who has an envelope that they want to get hold of, and even at that point, I was sort of like, "Is this woman what everything she seems to be?
Yeah.
What's going on here? Does one of these guys already know her? Is this some kind of a setup?
Hmm.
It is literally like that, and it's just fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
It's
Okay.
really, really so many twists, and then double twists, triple twists. It's like sort of mad, mad knot of plotting, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely was interesting. There was a point on there's a little sort of trailer on Amazon, which is where I watched it
Oh yeah.
for the film, and there was a little thing that came up saying that the screenplay had won some sort of an award
Right.
several years before it actually got produced.
Oh really?
So because I think the key thing with this is one of these films where it's such a solid piece of writing, and
Amazing.
it was obviously well planned and choreographed before they went in because it is so intricate.
It's
So
so intricate, so
yeah,
amazing. But yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Apparently, he based it on real scams that happened to his family members, and books about scams. But
yeah.
yeah, extraordinary. And one of the have you ever been conned in your life?
Well, I mean, I suppose I have over the years, but I certainly am much more sort of savvy to it now, especially when you get these phone calls. I don't know about you, but I always get these phone calls
Yes.
from people who, and for some reason, like my name's David, but for some reason I have these people keep calling me up all the time
Right.
and saying, "Can we speak to Bridget Seeley, please?" And I'm sort of like, there is no Bridget Seeley. It's so I don't know where they got that from,
Ah,
and it's quite funny. And sometimes I play along just for fun. If sometimes I like to string them along for a bit for some fun. And I so
right.
they ask for Bridget Seeley, and I go, yes, okay, just a minute, I'll go get her, or I'll just say, yes, this is Bridget. And I'll do those kind of things and then let them sort of talk for a couple of minutes before I pull the
Uh,
plug on it.
I've done that too. Yeah, but one of the good things about I was conned ages ago when I was sort of 19 and I was traveling around India, and basically it's a long story which I won't go into. But one of the things that they have to do is they have to sort of get you there's some claws into you basically, and you think and you they have to get you to want something,
Mm.
and that's what sort of draws you in. And so I guess that's these characters they want this money basically. I mean, that's what it's all about, and yeah, and that's what it gets. Another thing that it gets so brilliantly that sort of that greed essentially. You've got to have that sort of that greed is essential for any con. It's yeah, brilliant.
Well, it's great. Well, was there anything else that you wanted to say about it before we kind of moved on to our second feature?
No, I don't think so. Apart from it's terrific movie, and everybody should see it. And it's a real tragedy that the director died so comparatively young, so he didn't get any more of his excellent work. Apart from one other film after this, which is
Yeah,
I want to see now as well.
yeah, definitely. And I mean, we've said it already, but I would definitely highest recommendation. This is just an absolutely cracking good film.
Yeah,
Absolutely sort of riveting and keeps you guessing and on tender hooks
yeah,
all the way through it. And it's got some incredible layers of perception about
mm,
human nature in it,
mm.
and it's just really cracking good piece of film,
It is.
and I can't recommend it highly enough. So people should go and check it out.
Yeah,
And if you're interested in doing that, I mean, is it fair to say you watch it on Amazon as well?
I
Because
did. Yep,
currently in the UK, it's available for streaming on Amazon
yep,
and quite possibly some of the other, whatever your preferred streaming service is. I would imagine it's
yep.
probably available. But if you want more details, I would recommend that you go to our letterboxed review of Nine Queens, because there on Letterbox they will tell you what the availability in your territory is, so
Yes,
you can check it out for yourself, because it is an absolutely cracking good film. And I think we will put this on our essential film list, because I think it is an essential night's viewing. Definitely,
I was
definitely
going
worth
to say
seeing.
you can buy it on Blu-ray.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
Certainly in America, it's released by Sony Pictures, so bear that in mind as well.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I might actually. I mean, I don't own a copy, but at some point I could see myself, if the opportunity could present itself, I could see myself adding this one to the collection, because I think it's one I would want to watch again in the future for
Yeah,
sure.
definitely. It's
So, yeah. So, folks, check that out. And we are going to take a very brief intermission so that we can compose ourselves and make sure that nobody's stolen any money from our bank accounts. But you can trust us completely. We will be back in just a few seconds to talk about our second film in our Trust and Treachery double bill. And again, this is a film about where people are not what they appear to be on the surface,
definitely not.
but they manage to pull out a lot about what people are all about as they go along.
Yeah, exactly.
So, on that kind of cryptic description, I will leave you to spend just a few seconds listening to a message, and then we will be back to talk about Kiyoshi Kurosawa's Before We Vanish.
Hey, film nerds! Film Swap is now on Letterboxd. It's where you'll find capsule reviews for every film we've covered on the show, plus themed lists based on each of our episodes. and our essential cinema list, featuring the films we think are absolute must-sees. You can explore the themes and dive deeper and even drop your own swaps and suggestions in the comments. Got a perfect pick for one of our themes? Tell us. Follow Film Swap on Letterboxd, hit us with your hot takes and submit your swaps. It's like Criterion Closet, except only more chaotic. Just look for Film Swap Podcast on Letterboxd or use this handy dandy QR code. There's also a link in the comments. Hidden gems, forgotten classics. Follow Film Swap on Letterboxd and let's get nerdy. You can follow the Film Swap on social media. We're on Twitter and TikTok at Film Swap UK, on Instagram at Film Swap Media, and on YouTube at Film Swap_podcast. And at Facebook at Film Swap the Podcast.
And we're back. Welcome back, listeners, and welcome back, Jonathan, to our Trust and Treachery episode, Film Swap. Our double feature today is about films where people are not all they seem, basically. And it's about people who've got real trust issues. And tonight, our second feature, as we explained at the beginning, we picked a couple of films that we'd wanted to see for a while. They were kind of sitting on our watch list for a long time, and we've finally got around to watching them, and we thought we'd watch them and discuss them together. And then this theme emerged, because both films, on the surface, one of them is like sort of a crime heist drama made in Argentina.
Yep.
And our second film is actually kind of a hybrid science fiction action alien invasion film from Japan.
Yeah.
And it's actually not that old. It came out in 2017.
Yep.
And the reason I wanted to see it is because I'm a big fan of this particular filmmaker. His name's Kiyoshi Kurosawa.
Yep.
Not related to the Kurosawa, the famous Akira Kurosawa, who's obviously one of the great masters of the cinema.
Right.
But this guy is no slouch either. He's been very prolific.
Yeah.
And he's made a lot of films, like a huge list of films.
Really?
And very consistently, they're really, really, really good.
Right.
And he's probably most famous for two films. One of them's called Pulse, which is sort of like a kind of a J-horror sort of film. And the other one is called Cure, which is sort of a kind of a serial killer film. But much like this film, it's a serial killer film, but it's sorry, I don't want to. This film we're talking about tonight isn't a serial killer film.
No, I didn't notice it.
But Cure is a serial killer film, but it's got a very fascinating twist in that the serial killer doesn't kill anybody.
No.
No, he doesn't. But I won't say any more, because if you've never seen the film,
right,
you need to see Cure, because it is absolutely a brilliant film. And this Kurosawa is a master at making sort of films that on the surface are kind of like family dramas or sort of romantic dramas, but then as the film goes on, he slowly, gradually peels away layers and reveals more and more stuff until you kind of learn what's going on and kind of start to figure things out. And they're have a incredibly eerie vibe. And he's actually made a film called Creepy, which is kind of the most aptly named film of all time, because it is proper creepy.
Really?
And again, it is kind of about a serial killer as well.
Right.
But you don't kind of know that at first. It kind of, as the film progresses, you learn more and more. And he also did a really fascinating film called Tokyo Sonata, about a man who loses his job in Tokyo, but he tries to keep that a secret from his family. It's absolutely brilliant film, really, really cracking good. And he's made a few other really good ones, Journey to the Shore. So anyway, he's made a lot of really, really good, really interesting films. But
Right.
this was a film that I knew about, but for whatever reason, I'd never had an opportunity to see it.
Right.
And then what happened is one day, when, as I'm apt to do, as I'm a sort of a film collector, as I was browsing around on Amazon
Yep.
one day, and there was an opportunity to get a secondhand copy of the Blu-ray,
Oh, yeah.
and it was only like a few pounds or whatever. So I was like,
Right.
"Oh, I wanted to see that. I'll grab that so
Mm.
I can watch it." And then, of course, I promptly threw it on the watch pile, and it sat there for months,
Right.
not being watched. So this was my opportunity to check it out. I said, finally, Jonathan said, "Let's pick films that we've always wanted to watch."
Right.
And so I said, "Oh, that was one I've been meaning to watch for a long time."
Yeah.
So I picked this one, and I'm really glad I did because I thought it was really interesting,
Yeah.
um, really fascinating sort of flip on the kind of invasion of the body
Mm.
snatchers kind of idea,
Yeah.
because what it is it's about three aliens who come down to Earth as sort of a expeditionary force that have
Yes.
kind of come to Earth ahead of the main invasion
Counts.
to find out
Yeah.
about the human race, about their enemy or who are going to be their enemy, so that they can learn as much as they can,
Yeah.
uh, and then signal their mates up above to come down and take over. But then what happens? So we have these three aliens, and what they do is they come over and they take over, much like the invasion of the body snatchers. They take over a host body
Mm.
and then use that body to ingratiate themselves amongst the general population and try and learn as much as they can
Yeah.
about the human race. And then what's interesting too is that because they absolutely are kind of blank sheets in terms of their knowledge and understanding of humans and their culture, they actually kind of steal concepts from people.
Yes.
So what they do is they like, say, if someone, for instance, if like I was talking about collecting movies, so if one of these aliens was here, they would say, "Ooh, explain to me collecting. Think about that. What does that mean?"
Yeah.
And then they would, as soon as I had the concept in my mind,
Yeah.
they would steal it from me. They
Yeah.
basically put their finger up to their forehead and they go, "I'll have that,"
Yeah.
in a very creepy way. They kind of go, "Okay, I'll have that, thank you." And then they take it, and they literally take it in the sense that once they take it, the other person loses it.
Yeah.
They lose the concept. So maybe one of these aliens would do me a favor, because I would probably save a lot of money if they were to take away the concept of collecting from me.
Right.
But that's another story. But so that is basically the basic premise of the film,
Yeah.
and that these three aliens, what happens is one of them takes over a woman's husband, and she just one day, because he obviously starts to act quite odd,
Yeah.
quite strange, and she doesn't know what's going on. And so through the beginning part of the film, the course of the film, she's trying to just work out what's going on with her husband, who's acting
Mm.
all funny and starting to talk weird to people and starting to, sort of do all these weird things. So there is an element of comedy in the film as well, because even though it's kind of an alien invasion film and there's kind of a lot of, exciting action sequences with sort of gun battles and sort of
Yeah.
martial arts kind of sort of fights and things like that. There's also a lot of sort of black humor,
Yeah.
and some, again, with some very perceptive sort of examination of human nature and
Mm.
about sort of what it's kind of like to be human. Because
Yeah.
along the way, these aliens, as they progress and they meet more people and they begin to take these concepts and learn more about humanity,
Yeah.
they themselves become more human.
Yeah.
And so, unlike the first film that we talked about, which is a little bit more cynical and a little bit more sort of critical of
Yeah.
sort of human nature and about
Yeah.
greed and about the way that people manipulate one another and
Mm.
relate to each other in a selfish way. This film sort of takes you on this journey of sort of these alien creatures learning about humanity and about learning about what it is to be a person, and again about human relationships and things as well.
Yeah.
So in a strange sort of way, it's a bit more of a positive film, a
Yeah,
more
it's a lot more
hopeful
positive.
film ultimately. Um,
I mean, more people die, but
yes,
it's much more positive, funnily enough. In fact,
yeah,
nobody dies in Nine Queens.
no.
But yeah, this one,
Although there's a lot of threat, I suppose there's a
yeah,
lot of threatened violence and things like that.
yeah. But I mean, to me, because I mean, it's not giving much away. The first scene is this Japanese schoolgirl in I think it's not sure if it's her parents or her family house, but basically she's in this house, and there's sort of all the people who live in the house are dead on the floor, and she's got sort of blood all over her, and I guess the implication is that she's killed them.
Yes,
And you think, okay, we're in for the one of these sort of alien invasion type films, but
yeah,
then basically that's the first 2 or 3 minutes, and then that really that side of things almost completely stops. I mean, there is a little bit more violence later on, but
mm,
not a lot, I would say.
yeah,
And it's quite a sort of gentle film in some ways. It's sort of I felt like it was sort of but even the alien, because basically it's similar to the invasion of the body snatchers, isn't it?
mm,
So the bodies get snatched of these people. They sort of turn into aliens. They look like their normal selves, but
mm.
they've been taken over by these alien intelligences. There's only sort of three of them. It's not like the whole. It's not.
No, no. And they're not even together at first. They've obviously been either separated or came down separately.
Yeah,
But then through the course of the film, they gradually end up meeting up with each other and sort of combining. But
exactly.
by that time, they've each developed, because they kind of have different personalities to begin with. One of them, the one who's in the young schoolgirl's body,
Hmm.
she's a bit more of an action person, and she's a bit
Yeah.
more of a sort of callous and
Hmm.
uncaring, and just fascinated by the mechanics of the human body and
Yeah.
things like that. And she's also the one who, when she runs into um, these sort of government agents and police and things like that, she just kills them outright, and sometimes in quite fancy ways,
Hmm.
jumping and flipping around, doing kicks and things,
Yeah.
sort of martial artsy sort of things. And then the husband character, the one who's with the wife, is a little bit more. His character is a bit more passive and a bit more curious,
Hmm.
and like and his learning doesn't seem to be about sort of tactical learning, but it seems to be more a genuine interest in
Yeah.
learning about humans and human nature and understanding. So he has a much more of a curiosity
Yeah.
and an openness to learning,
Yeah.
whereas the other aliens have kind of slightly different agendas and different personalities. And
Yes.
and then so by the end of the film, as they all develop and then eventually converge, they they maybe find that their agendas don't quite match up the same anymore.
No. No. It's one of the things that I was sort of feeling when I was watching it. It was sort of because when they get, occasionally they, you know, I'm not sure if they snatch other bodies or they sort of give them a sort of touch on the forehead. They not just steal the concept, but they sort of touch them in some way,
Mm,
and they become uh, something other. They change somehow,
mm,
and made me think it was like slightly sort of a Buddhist film. Uh,
Mm.
being Japanese, I guess that's one of the ideas that's sort of floating around there. And because there's what do they say when they get their personalities get snatched? They say, "I we basically there's no me and there's no you," or something like that.
Mm.
And it's sort of that they're is everything sort of one. Then when they when they've been sort of touched on the forehead by this, and
Mm.
yeah, it's quite a but it's sort of quite gentle because yeah, these aren't. I mean, I guess maybe one or two of them are threatening, but yeah, the husband is not a very threatening alien. Is
No, no. And he
he's
seems to genuinely have a positive effect on most of the people that he comes across.
yeah
Like there's the young man who they have this wonderful scene about, yeah, because I mean that's why the film really works for me because
yeah
I took it much as a kind of a satire of sort of looking at these sort of different concepts that we have
yeah
and sort of looking at it from the perspective of someone who just doesn't understand them. So
yeah
you can then sort of see a little bit of the kind of, poke a bit of fun at it or see the sort of funny side or the absurd side of kind of some of our human sort
yeah
of constructs that
yeah
we've done in our society. So there's this wonderful scene where he's kind of left the house because he just keeps wandering off on his wife and to her exasperation.
yeah
And at one point, he just kind of walks up to somebody's house and he just kind of like goes, "Oh, is this your house?" And he just kind of walks in, and the guy goes, "No, no, no, you can't go in. This is my house. This is my property." And the
yes
guy kind of goes, "Property? Explain to me. What do you mean by property?" And they have this whole exchange, and it's really, really, really funny. And then when he finally takes the guy the concept of possession from this young man,
mm.
then the young man, it almost like he develops this messianic kind of
Yes
sort of idea of who these aliens are because he explains that, well, I used to be a shut-in in the house and I never leave the house,
yeah
and now all of a sudden I'm free and
yeah
I want to be free and go out and into the world. And then he ends up that you see him later standing on street corners, like Speaker's Corner, like sort of standing there, making speeches to people and all that.
yeah
So his experience of having this concept taken away has actually transformed him
yeah
and freed him up
yeah
to be, more open and more, more of an open person with
yeah
and less shy and withdrawn.
mm.
And then there's another character who's the lady's boss at work, who's, very sort of a stickler for detail, and he makes this big speech about, you're this isn't all about being arty farty. This is work, and you
Yes.
gotta,
yeah
you just need to do this because it's work. And then the alien takes the concept of work away from this man, which then completely transforms him into a completely different person who's sort of free of these sort
yeah
of all these sort of pressures and
mm.
things that he had around his business and his, so the
yeah
film has lots of little moments like that of sort of
yeah
examining, seeing it through these aliens eyes, and then seeing how that transforms people and the relationships
yeah
that they have to one another.
mm. Yeah,
So
in that sense, it's sort of uh, ideas are not trustworthy in this thing, are they? It's ideas that keeping people sort of tied down,
mm,
and whereas in Nine Queens, there's a sort of that yeah trust again becomes sort of problematic.
yeah,
So I
yeah,
guess
yeah, exactly. And all those guys, everyone in Nine Queens really, whatever human contact they have, it's all literally transactional. It's
mm,
all sort of, I want something from you. How can I get it?
Yeah.
And the way I'm going to get it from you is not to be honest and straightforward, but it's
Mm.
going to be to trick you and
Yeah.
manipulate you. Whereas in this film, on a certain level, it's the same thing. Everybody kind of wants something.
Yeah.
What the aliens just want is just knowledge, and they're
Yes.
kind of a blank canvas in which to take it. But from the humans' point of view, they can't trust them either, can they?
No.
So there is that same sort of, level of sort of mistrust, and as the film progresses, the kind of authorities and people begin to realize that something is happening. They don't know if it's a virus, or they don't know if it's but they just know that something is coming and something is happening, and it begins to affect people on a larger scale.
Yeah.
And I think that is one bit of the film that for me sort of didn't work, because it
Right.
didn't really make a lot of sense about the fact that there were these, I guess it's assumed that they were some sort of a government agency that was aware of the aliens,
Yeah.
and they were trying to track them down and hunt them down
Yeah.
and catch them. But there was never really any sort of understanding about what exactly it was they were trying to achieve, and what they really knew or understood about what was going on.
No.
And then there was also these big scenes towards the end where people are all panicking and all converging at hospitals and all, but it's never really clear why,
Yeah.
because they didn't really know what was going on.
No.
So it was almost just they were just reacting to an aura or an atmosphere of uncertainty, and
Yeah.
everyone was just starting to become anxious and
Yeah.
agitated about that.
Because it was a sort of anti alien invasion film
Yeah,
for sort of 90% of it, and then suddenly there's these packed hospitals. Like, wait a second, what the hell's going on here? Then,
yeah,
there was there was like 10 people involved before that, and,
yeah, yeah.
and then suddenly, yeah, that it's
But
almost
then, then even though that stuff was going on, then there was then scenes after that
mm,
where people were standing on street corners, or there was all this commotion going on with one of
mm,
the aliens getting chased or chasing somebody or something, and then but there's everyone's just standing around like normal at the having
mm,
their dinners, or just standing on the street corners and not being very reactive,
yeah,
being as somehow seeming disconnected
mm,
from what's going on. So the two things didn't gel. It was sort of like, are people getting agitated and starting to panic about this perceived danger that's coming,
mm,
or are they not?
yeah,
And it's sort of like, which is it? So there was a little bit of contradictory sort of stuff going on in the background that didn't quite gel.
yeah.
Um,
Well, I think there was one of the lines is, "Why not act more like an alien? Shoot death rays from your eyes."
yes,
It's sort of, yeah, because it's not they're not very it's not very alien. It doesn't sort of fill the tropes of sort of alien movies.
no.
And then sometimes it does, but then when it tries to, it sort of doesn't quite work, I would say.
Well, it kind of turns it on its head. I mean, the thing is,
Yeah,
yeah, like the best comparison to this movie is the Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
yeah,
And that is an idea where these, the people are gradually getting taken over,
yeah,
and it's spreading, and you don't know who's been taken over and who hasn't been taken over.
yeah,
And, and it's getting worse and worse and worse.
yeah,
And there's that sense of dread, because you know that has that person been taken over or not?
yeah,
Or like The Thing, the John Carpenter's The Thing,
mhm,
where,
yeah,
this alien sort of mimics other life forms. So you
yeah,
never know, is that an alien, or is it an alien? Is that guy an alien, or isn't he an alien? Who can I trust? Where
yeah,
can I turn? But
yeah,
this film kind of completely kind of does it the other way, is that there's only a few aliens. They're not really going around taking people over,
no,
because all they're doing is they're not stealing. They steal bodies, but only just the one. They take a body
mm.
and assume that identity, and then they go out to learn.
It's still
And
constant. Just
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And
only
they're
one concept
picking.
per person, it seems. So they only
Yes.
take one concept per person. It's not like they sort of take all your concepts and leave you a sort of jelly on the
No,
floor. They
no. So
take
it's not
one
an
idea.
efficient. You're right. It's not an efficient process
No.
because they have to go around and they have to engage people, and then they have to say, "Okay, that thing that you mentioned, I don't know what that means. Can you think about that?" And then I'll
Yeah.
take it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like that. So it's a very inefficient way of
Yeah.
learning information because in most of these kind of alien invasion movies, they'd come down and hack into your computer and just upload all the data and they'd learn everything in 5 minutes. But
Yeah.
in this film, it's more of like this gradual process. But I think that was intentional because the
Yeah.
idea is that the film is meant to be, like I said, kind of a satire or like using the alien, the I guess the idea of somebody, an outsider with a completely blank perspective on the human race, and then they come to observe that and take away ideas from that.
Yeah.
And it's a way of basically looking at humanity and about how we relate to one another and all these concepts and constructs that we've developed in our society.
Yes.
So I think that's really, what the purpose of the film was, rather than kind of Independence Day where it comes down and blows up the White House and
Yeah.
attacks with ships and blows everything up and sort
It's
of stuff.
definitely not that sort of.
It's more of a kind of a cerebral
Yeah.
take on the alien invasion idea, I guess.
Very much indie alien invasion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is more positive in the sense that as the film progresses, at least one of the aliens becomes more and more human
Yeah.
as the film progresses. And that you observe that, and in a sense he almost kind of switches roles with the human
Mm.
because the human guide that he has, they almost kind of by the end of the film have swapped their roles,
Yeah.
haven't they,
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
sense. So I guess that's kind of the payoff for the in the film.
Yeah.
So
He becomes less cynical. So
yes.
so I guess the trajectory of both films is different. In the first film, they become more and more cynical. In this one, they become less and less cynical. In a
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, and the essence of the film, the end, I think it has a positive ending. It sort
Yeah,
of
very
has a more
positive,
of a,
incredibly positive ending. Yeah.
yeah, and so it kind of builds up to that.
Yeah.
Whereas in most, I guess, this doesn't end with Will Smith shooting all the aliens and blowing up a ship and then going, "Yay, we did it." It's instead it's more of a, like you say, a gentle sort of progression to a
Yeah.
sort of a satisfying resolution, or well, I don't know if satisfying is the right word because it's a hopeful
Hopeful.
ending, but
Hopeful.
it's not a sort of a definitive one either.
No.
So because it kind of leaves some things ambiguous and some things open,
Yeah.
which it leaves you some space to think about some of these ideas, or go and take them and talk about them on a podcast.
Yeah. Exactly.
So, but anyway, so I guess to sum up, how what did you think overall? Would you recommend this to someone and say you should go and check this out, or
Yeah, I would. I'd say it's a very unusual, sort of whimsical sci-fi. I mean, how many whimsical sci-fi movies are there? I can't think of many. Sort of,
maybe not? No.
uh, and yeah, sort of somewhat sort of Buddhist in perspective. How many Buddhist sci-fi movies are there? Not that many. Or definitely sort of humanistic, you could say. And it's very unusual film, and I like the pacing. It's sort of not. It's not wham bam, thank you, man. It's sort of it's quite sort of slow generally. Uh,
Yeah,
and it's not in sort of spectacular landscapes. It's in sort of Japanese suburbia, basically, which is quite nice as well, and a bit unusual. Yeah, really, really good, really unusual because I've never seen any of this guy's films. Never actually heard of him. Can you believe it? So it's a bit like you with Nine Queens. So
Yeah.
com- completely.
Well, I would definitely recommend you check out more of
Hmm.
Kiyoshi Kurosawa's films because he definitely check out Cure.
Okay.
And Pulse is really cool as well, and Creepy if you want like a really creepy sort of kind of
What a
horror
name for a
movie.
film. Creepy.
Yeah, and definitely Tokyo Sonata, it's called,
Okay.
is really brilliant film, and it's more of just like a family drama, but with a kind of a twist, and it's really just cracking good stuff. Really good filmmaker, and
Yeah.
that's why I wanted to see this film because
Hmm.
I'm an admirer of this. I call
Yeah.
him the other Kurosawa,
Yeah. Yeah.
because he's not the Kurosawa, but
No.
he's definitely a really great filmmaker, and he's made a lot of really interesting films.
Yeah.
Um, and I would recommend this one. Haven't seen it for the first time. I mean, I would look forward to checking this out again. And
Hmm.
like you say, I like it because it's sort of a twist on some basic sort of sci-fi tropes, but it
Yeah.
kind of turns them on their head. And like you say, it's not like that wham bam, thank you, ma'am. It's like it's got a few kind of action sequences,
Yeah.
and it's got some sort of spectacle, but not a lot. It's more grounded, and it's paced
Yeah.
in that Kurosawa way of, and again the Kiyoshi Kurosawa way of that kind of slowly revealing things and gradually bringing things out so
Hmm.
that you more and more understand what's happening and what's going on.
Definitely.
And
Because at the beginning, when there's this sort of blood spattered room, I thought, okay, this is the sort of film I'm watching, like a sort of blood spattered
yeah,
film, I
yeah,
guess. But then, as I said earlier, it almost sort of very soon that sort of stops. And in some ways, you think, is there an alien invasion, or are these? Because the husband,
yeah,
who's been sort of body snatched, as it were, the doctors say, well, he could be early onset dementia, and
yeah, yeah.
or it's
Or
almost
he's just, yeah, it just could be like a mental health thing,
or a
and that
mental
is like there is, as the film progresses at the in the early stages, you could just think, yeah, these people are just
health.
loopy.
Yeah, well,
And
it could be the whole thing. Even almost at
yeah,
the end, you could almost say, "Oh, yeah, well, it is just a sort of not an alien invasion film. It's just the misinterpretation of the other people."
yeah. That's an interesting way to interpret it,
Yeah.
and that's what makes it even more interesting because
Mm,
it is one of those kind of films that you can
yeah.
bring a bit of your own sort of processes to figuring it out and
Yeah.
deciding for yourself
Yeah.
what it all means and where it's coming from, and it does make you think about these things, and it's got a great stream of humor running through it. There's a lot of satire and a lot of little
Mm,
funny kind of quirky moments that
yeah.
kind of make you chuckle or kind of it's a really interesting film and
Mm,
worthwhile. And you're right, because I remember when I was reading up after I watched it, I read the Wikipedia page, and
yeah.
it did say that some of the criticism leveled at it was about the pacing of it, that it was
Really.
slow and too long or whatever. But for
Right.
me, that I didn't find that a
Mm,
problem at all, and I think that's a lot about people bringing that expectation into it because it is a science fiction
mm,
film, and they kind of have that expectation that it is going to be Will Smith doing
yeah.
somersaults off of roofs and shooting machine guns and
Mm.
blowing things up and stuff like that, but that isn't what this film's about. It's a bit more
It's a different kind of
thoughtful. a bit more of a thoughtful
Yeah,
take, and it's about the ideas.
yeah,
And
exactly.
so if
Gently
you,
paced, gently paced. Not, it's not.
yeah,
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 it's
but certainly not like boring or slow or anything in the sense that, because it is like it kind of it hooks you in, introduces you to these characters, and then takes you on this kind of journey through
yeah,
what happens. And it's really, really, really enjoyable
mhm,
and thoughtful film,
yeah,
and just an interesting take on the kind of science fiction-y sort of alien invasion kind of thing.
yeah.
So definitely, folks, check it out. This is the Blu-ray from Arrow Video. Like I said, I was fortunate enough just to pick this up because someone was obviously getting rid of it, so I just picked up a secondhand copy. But it's out there and available. And I looked for Jonathan's benefit. It is available on Amazon for rental. And what you can do is if you check our letterbox page on our little capsule review that I'll post
Yeah.
when the show goes out. There will be information on there for where you can access this film if you'd like to watch it for yourself, and I think you should.
Yeah, I think so. Definitely. Yeah,
Yeah.
really unusual, sort of offbeat sci-fi film.
Mm.
I would say.
Yeah, and you know what? Traditionally, that's what Film Swab has been all about. Like we're trying to kind of pick out some little sort of more obscure gems
Mm.
and bring them to people's attention, so that you can maybe see something a little bit that you might not have considered watching otherwise. But we kind of want to draw your attention to it and say, this is pretty interesting
Yes,
or entertaining film, and you should check this out.
100%.
Um, but I think that's a good segue into making a little bit of an announcement. Um, in order to facilitate engagement going forward, we have decided that henceforth, going forward on Film Swap, we are only going to be talking about films that have earned at least $250 million at the box office. No, I'm only joking. We are going to continue just like we are, quite defiantly nerdy, and defiantly championing the more esoteric and good quality films that are out there that we want to draw people's attention to. We could always, in the future, we might decide to change our name to Disney Swap or something like that,
Blockbuster swap.
and only talk about films that are on Disney Plus. But I'm not sure it would ring true. But anyway, definitely, hopefully, folks, you will come back and join us again. And I hope you'll check out these two films because they are really, really interesting,
Yeah,
uh, really good films. And we will be back soon to talk about some more.
definitely.
And we do have some really interesting guests coming up. I know I keep saying that at the end of the show, but I really mean it. We are just in the process of organizing. The thing with guests is, it's about scheduling and finding the right time to be able to sit down with people and record with them. So keep your eye on our website, filmswap.uk. Make sure you follow or subscribe. And it would be really helpful to us as well because, out on the internet, we're kind of competing with about sort of 5 billion other people who are all desperately trying to get your attention. So anything you could do to help us just by following or subscribing to the show or leaving a little review or a comment at the end, wherever it is that you find us, that's really helpful
Mm.
for the old algae rhythms to churn us up a little bit and put
Yeah,
us in front of a couple of people. So by all means, please do that if you can. And come back and join us next time when we'll have another interesting theme, interesting guests, and really interesting films to talk about.
definitely.
So, folks, thanks for listening, and take care of yourselves, and we hope to see you very soon.
Definitely. Goodbye.
Okay. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to the Film Swap podcast. If you like this podcast, please consider giving the show a rating or leaving a review. This helps other listeners find the show. Binge-worthy and better with time, our past episodes are packed with deep dives, hot takes, and fascinating themes. Whether you're a long-time listener or just jumping in, there's a topic and a classic film to suit any taste. Explore the Film Swap back catalogue today. Learn more at filmswap.uk.
Oh, the things these nerdy middle-aged men get up to.